So I just got done watching Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, one of my most anticipated films for this year, frankly just because Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of my favorite films of all time, Indiana Jones is personally my favorite movie character of all time, and this entire franchise I think is one of the best, if not the best, action-adventure franchise of all time. And when you take all that mixed together, I went into the Dial of Destiny with a lot of expectations. The trailers were great, but then the reactions at Cannes Film Festival started to kind of make me go, okay, maybe this is not everything it should be cracked up to be. And that nervousness started to sink in a little bit, and I started to go, did James Mangold fail us? Did Harrison Ford really not give the best Indiana Jones that we could have gotten? And after seeing the movie, I think everyone who saw this movie and said it was mediocre or garbage is insane. I think Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is spectacular and holds its own with the majority of this franchise. And I have a lot to say about this movie, and I'm very excited to be reviewing it today. So make sure to leave your thoughts down below. Hit that like and subscribe button for more, because we do have an Indiana Jones ranking coming very soon, which is going to be very hard to do because other than Raiders of the Lost Ark, the rest of the franchise is very interchangeable for me personally. And yes, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, not that bad. Just rewatched it. Can't defend the stupid monkey swinging bite. Everything else, great. Honestly, maybe I just lost a lot of credibility for some of you guys who absolutely hate Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but let's dive into Dial of Destiny, because this is about archaeologist Indiana Jones who races against time to retrieve a legendary dial that can change the course of history. Accompanied by his goddaughter, he soon finds himself squaring off against a former Nazi who was now working for NASA. That's just very much basically what you need to know before diving into this movie. What I will also say is that the trailers really did a great job at hiding a lot in this movie, which is so great to see. I feel so many blockbusters spoil so much, and I was pleasantly surprised through a lot of this, even though some of my theories did happen to come true. And with diving into this, let's talk about my pros. So first off, Harrison Ford, let's get him out of the way. The man, the myth, the legend. He is an amazing actor, and he absolutely brings it as Indiana Jones once again. I don't think any of us were ever nervous that he was just gonna phone this in. I don't think he actually would have come back to just phone this in. This seems to be a character that he's very passionate about, and specifically when you see him talking about the character itself, you can see that he is very personally attached to this one. After rewatching all the other films over this past weekend before watching this movie, I can definitely say that Harrison Ford, I genuinely think that Indiana Jones is his best character that he's ever played. And I know many people who are Star Wars fans will be, what about Han Solo? He's great as Han Solo. But there's something about this character that he gives this pizzazz to that really just feels untouchable. And every film, there is an arc and a build to Indy's character, and that all four of the films that we got before this really center in, really come to life in Dial of Destiny, which I was surprised to see how poignant and beautiful and even somber they really touched into his character. A character who in general has done so many triumphant things for history and art, maybe has left some other people behind, and maybe is trying to start to feel like maybe his legacy has been left behind. And seeing how that plays out in Dial of Destiny is honestly one of the most emotional parts of this entire film, and Harrison Ford has quite a few moments in here that actually really tugged at the heartstrings, and I actually found myself crying at the very end of this movie because of Harrison Ford's performance and the story choices that they decided to do. And they were unexpected, but the way that they swing these bold choices, I loved. And again, Ford is absolutely incredible in here. Another big part of this is Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who I've never actually watched Fleabag, and I've never really watched her in anything before, so this was kind of like my first experience with Bridge. I know I need to catch up on a lot of different things she's done. And I will say, from watching the trailer, I thought, okay, this character's going to go one way or the other. Annoying or not. And I have to say, at first, I was like, okay, I like this character. Then midway through the film, I'm like, she's kind of a little bit annoying. But thankfully, by the third act, her character really comes full swing, and you start to understand why her character is the way that she is, and that is when she sold me. I started to really love her in here and thought she was absolutely magnetic by the end. And I think her and Ford absolutely have great chemistry with one another. Another main character in here who was not marketed all too much is Ethan Isidore, who plays a young kid named Teddy in here, who is very close to Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character. I liked him too. I have one little mixed and con aspect to his character as much, but we'll talk about that later in the review. For the rest of the cast, of course, Boyd Holbrook is great. John Rhys Davis is great as Sala. Toby Jones was fantastic in here. I wish we actually got a little bit more of him. Antonio Banderas, not in here enough, but I liked him. And of course, speaking on Mads Mikkelsen, he's great. I think what I really love actually is while his performance is good, the thing that's so great about his villain, because I don't think he's one of the best Indiana Jones villains. I think he's like maybe number 3 or 4, to be honest. The thing that I actually love about Mads Mikkelsen's villain, though, is I think as a development, instead of just being this scary Nazi guy who is kind of intimidating at points, and we've seen Mads Mikkelsen be very intimidating in a lot of things, this character is actually really deep. And specifically, the way that they wrote the script as a parallel compared to Indiana Jones, 2 guys who are feeling the exact same way, but in different categories, and all chasing the exact same device, the same artifact that has all these mysterious aspects around it. These are the things that I really loved about that, and I think Mads Mikkelsen did a really great job in there. Again, we've seen him in so many villain roles. This is actually one of the few that is very different than anything he's played before in those departments, and I was so happy to see that. But James Mangold did come in here to direct this, and, you know, Steven Spielberg was originally supposed to direct this. He's directed every other Indiana Jones film. I am still a little bit sad that he didn't direct this, and once he left, I was a little bit nervous, but then Mangold came on, who I absolutely love what he did with Logan. I think that's one of the best comic book films ever made. Ford v Ferrari was absolutely fantastic, and I think it's true enough to say that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is also fantastic. On a directing scale, what I've really always loved about James Mangold is how he directs movies and how he really harkens back to classic blockbuster filmmaking style, specifically in the last 3 movies he's made, including this one. Whether we look at Ford versus Ferrari, that movie in general, in the way that it entices you and the way that it kind of feels like a dad movie, really harkens back to old school biopics. Then you look at Logan, which for me is again an all-star comic book film that, while it builds off the X-Men franchise, does at times feel like an old classic blockbuster western in the days of Clint Eastwood, in the way that the story is told, in the poetic nature of it all. And Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, while again it has some exquisite action set pieces, a lot of car chases that you've probably seen in the trailer that I thought were honestly directed in such a flair and pizzazz that just kept me on edge. And every single one of the action sequences in here are great, whether it's from the very opening sequence, which is the entire de-aging sequence, we'll talk about that in a second, or even to, again, the horse chase through the streets, the car chase, and even more surprises from there that I don't want to get into, primarily in the last 30 minutes, which I thought was just weird, and I love those bold takes, but I love what they went with this in here, and it just made me smile from ear to ear, because I love when adventure movies get weird, and I love when Indiana Jones gets weird, and it got freaking weird. But James Mangold, with all those action scenes, in between all those natural moments, has poignant and beautiful thematical nature to it. And as much as I love Indiana Jones, and I've loved this franchise, in reality, I think there's an argument to be made that Indy has always been more about the adventure and a lot more about the action and the artifact that they are discovering than the actual character itself. The character's always there. There's always something to go about it, whether it's Temple of Doom, Raiders of the Lost Ark, or even specifically Last Crusade when he is going on an adventure with his father, or if you even look at King of the Crystal Skull when he finds out that he is a father himself and reunites with his long-lost love. There are a lot of character building moments in there. But what this film does so well is it takes all those moments that, again, build up a character naturally because we love him so much and how charismatic he is, and elevates that in Dial of Destiny in a very poignant and somber way that makes you relook at the entire franchise as a whole. And that's where Mangold excels at. He did it with Logan. And I think, again, there's an argument to be made that, for the most part, Wolverine was kind of just a character there in each X-Men film that got a little bit of development, but with all of it together, and now watching Logan, you get that entire oomph, that emphasis to it all. I was really happy to see how he did that with Dial of Destiny, and I love how they were able to build off that character and build off the entire franchise and make something that does feel finite and honestly cements Indiana Jones as not just one of the most charismatic, not just one of the most entertaining and fun characters to watch, but also one of the most deep characters that anyone can relate to that has ever dealt with regret and their past and anything of that nature. There's so much that Indy has to himself. Again, Harrison Ford plays that perfectly. Now, on top of that, I did mention the visual effects. A lot of people were going hoop-ha about the de-aging, and the de-aging is literally only in here for a sequence and a half, I say. The sequence and a half is very much the early stuff that you see on the train and everything of that nature, and it's a lot of fun. I love that sequence. How does the de-aging look? It looks good. He's sitting still and talking. It doesn't look as bad. When it jumps around some of the action sequences, sometimes it can get a little bit messy and looks a little bit uncanny valley, but it never took me out of the experience. It's not terrible. I think it's almost up to par with The Irishman, which I think so far has probably done the best de-aging, or even Captain Marvel, whatever you want to say about that movie. The de-aging on Samuel L. Jackson in that film was absolutely excellent. And I think the only thing with the de-aging that actually caught me off guard was sometimes the lip syncing with the audio did not match. I don't know if that was just the screening I was in or primarily just this film just has that issue. It just kind of felt off. And of course, with Harrison Ford being a lot older, and when they use his voice, I'm not sure how they did the voice for the younger version, but it definitely felt like older Ford talking through a younger version of his body, which kind of just took me out of the experience just a hair. While I'm talking still about my pros, it's more of a mixed aspect in there, but it doesn't look too bad. The visual effects as a whole, though, do look great, and I actually really love the practicability of a lot of the different sequences. And while James Mangold is no Spielberg, like, no one is Spielberg, he is, like, again, a lot of people can argue the best director that's ever lived. I think Mangold just, again, crafts excellent action sequences and entertaining ones at that know exactly what they need to be. But again, never takes away from the feel and never tries to go too far in being a modern day blockbuster, which I think a lot of people might actually be very disappointed in the way that this film plays out is because of that. And I guess maybe that's why a lot of the critics were so a little bit down on this, is that they were expecting more of a fun, pizzazz, entertaining action adventure movie like the previous Indiana Jones, but it actually has a little bit more depth to it, and maybe some of that depth won't work for all of you. It definitely worked for me. John Williams' score in here is absolutely just as incredible as you would ever imagine it to be. The cinematography is absolutely stellar as well, and every single beat of this movie really just hit home for me as a whole. Like, the second I walked out of this movie, I actually asked the rep, I was like, is there another screening of this movie before it comes out? I want to go see it. And with how busy my life is, the fact that I want to go see this movie again, a 2.5-hour movie, that's saying a lot. Now, as for the runtime, I guess that's where we should start diving into my mixed aspects, and I actually do think the runtime can be a little bit slow at times. I'm not gonna lie, that's not perfect. The pacing, out of all the Indiana Jones movies, this movie probably has the worst pacing, and I do think, and I don't hate this kid, but the character of Teddy itself, I felt kind of dragged the pacing down a bit. There's sometimes where Indy and Phoebe Waller-Bridger's character are doing something over here, and then Teddy's doing something over here. I always felt that he was more of a MacGuffin to further certain sequences. And I never really needed that, to be honest. And there's certain moments in there where it kind of just drags the pacing quite a bit. I genuinely think maybe a rewrite or two for a 2.5-hour movie maybe could have gotten this film under 2 hours and 15 minutes. And I think that would have been like the perfect length for this film personally. Truly, that is the only issue I have with this movie. Like, I sat in my car after this film and just sat there in disbelief of how much I enjoyed Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. This is everything I wanted. It's entertaining, it's beautiful, it's fulfilling, it's weird, and it's emotional. James Mangold delivers a classic blockbuster that explores the regret, time, and our legacies, and it's a fitting end to one of the best characters of all time. I genuinely do not understand the hate on this movie. Films are always going to be subjective, but such a somber blockbuster that brings everything that I could have expected and a deeper meaning to this character than I could have wanted. Again, I am nostalgic. I love Indiana Jones. I love the character. I love Harrison Ford in here, and I am one of the weirdos that does like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Sue me, whatever. Again, that might disavow my entire opinion, but I am someone that really loves Raiders of the Lost Ark, and as someone who's been craving classic blockbusters, and every time like I rewatch that movie, it makes me pissed at like the state of blockbusters right now. While I do enjoy quite a bit, I miss that tone, I miss that love, and James Mangold nailed that with Dial of Destiny. So, that said, I'm gonna give this film an A-. Thank you so much again, guys, for watching this. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Look out for my Indiana Jones ranking releasing the week of release on this film, so do look forward to that. Lots of movie reviews coming up soon, and of course, until next time, stay classy.